Are you ready to take the fight against the Xenos and Chaos to the desert? Well, today we're going to be doing that while talking about a new Imperial Guard unit that really is new to me that I learned more about as I was doing the Dune video a few weeks ago, and that is the Tallarn Desert Raiders. It's a really, really fascinating unit that has some very unique traits to them that do tie back to history a little bit, but are very different from the other Imperial Guard units we've covered so far. So let's dive into it and talk about the power of the desert. Hey everybody, today's video is brought to you by Tartary Press. That's my personal imprint that sells all of my novels as well as some of my merch on my website. So if you go to www.tylertartar.com, you can get access to signed books like the Amazon bestseller anthology that I was in, or my fantasy trilogy, or my science fiction series. You can get all of those at www.tylertartar.com, as well as on Royal Road. You can find some upcoming stories that I have there to preview to audiences. So make sure you check those out, and let's get back to the video. The Tallarn Desert Raiders are from a completely desolate desert world that used to once be a very fertile and productive agri-world, but was virus bombed in order to stop the invasion of chaos. Now, after generations, they've become specialists in the desert, learning how to fight and survive in completely inhospitable lands that a lot of other units would not survive in. And because of that, they are very, very talented at what they do. They specialize in light to medium tank warfare, and they love their sentinels. They often run very similar to what you would have seen during World War II in the early days when Rommel was battling Montgomery in the desert. It's very much tank heavy with infantry that ride on tracked vehicles to move quickly from point A to point B. Now, there is actually a book called Desert Raider. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it anywhere while I was looking. The only places I could find it were on pirated websites, and after I've had my run-in with pirates in the book world because of the whole meta thing and discovering one of my books is currently on those websites, I couldn't in good conscience actually get that book there and read it. So unfortunately, I don't have a book review tied to this, but if you guys can find that book, definitely check it out. It looks really good and looks really fascinating, but I just couldn't get a hold of it. So I did read the quick synopsis just to get a feel for the army, and I did base a lot of that build around it. So let's talk about the actual army, what it looks like, and I have a feeling a lot of the lore and what they look like will come in the painting section, because you're going to have to do some decent adaptation to get this army looking right. Okay, so now that you guys have a brief history and lore on the Tallarn Desert Raiders, let's talk about how we're going to build them on the tabletop. The big thing with this is we're going to be using Cadians as a baseline. The nice part with Cadians is they're pretty generic-esque looking for what we'd expect from Imperial Guard. And they're very easy to head swap and get certain things to really make them look correct. And it's not a hard stretch to adapt them, giving that flak armor underneath cloaks and robes and things like that to adjust and make them look more correct to the Imperial Guard unit. So a lot of times when we're talking about creating different units in the Imperial Guard that aren't directly represented, I tend to start with the Cadians just because they're a good baseline. Sometimes the Krieg make a better one depending on which unit you're going for. So to start us out, we're going to go with our Warlord, and that's going to be our Rogaldorn tank commander. He's going to be leading the tanks into battle and will be commanding from there. Unfortunately, I don't know why on the tabletop you can't just take your tank commander, stick him in a Baneblade, which he actually would be doing. But unfortunately, you only have two options. You have the Rogaldorn and the Leman Russ, and that's it. So I went with the Rogel Dorn just to give us a little bit heavier firepower on this one. And then we have a Castellan who's going to be leading our foot troops. We have a Cadian command squad who will be moving and emphasizing doing exactly what command squads do for the Imperial Guard with all of their options. I have a Munistorm Priest. You can swap this out for a Commissar as well. Just based on how I did this, I didn't have the points for a Commissar. I was 10 points short. But if you want to tweak things a little bit and get a Commissar in there, I would definitely recommend it. It makes sense to have a Commissar in this unit. Also, we have a Tech Priest Engine Seer. And that covers all of our characters. The Engine Seer is going to help keep our tanks moving and make sure we have everything we need in place. Next, we're going to have 3 units of Cadian Shock Troopers. These are going to be our primary infantry. The Tallarn Desert Raiders are very famous for punching above their weight with shot power, so they use a lot of plasma and heavy weapons in a small unit format. So the Cadian Shock Troopers are probably the best we can get there. If you wanted to drop one of those and add a heavy weapon squad as well, that wouldn't be weird. That would still fit within how it would work. I went back and forth on it, but I figured because we have so many tanks, we don't really need the heavy weapon squad as much. Next, we have 2 units of the Tallarn Rough Riders. The Tallarn Rough Riders are a major part of this as well. The Tallarn Desert Raiders are all about mobility and scouting and being able to adapt to any situation. So having Rough Riders on scouts would be correct. In the books, they don't ride horses, they ride bikes, though. So when we get to the fluffy cost, there are proxies that would be involved there. Next, we move into the tanks. We have a Baneblade. This Baneblade is going to be our primary punching tool that is designed to clear things out very quickly. Then we have 2 Leman Russ battle tanks. We have 2 armored sentinels. We have 2 Taurochs to transport a couple of those Cadian shock troops. And we have 2 scout sentinels. All of these vehicles are going to be key to how we fight as the Tallarn Desert Raiders. We need to move quick and we need to punch above our weight. And then finally, we have a lot of heads and bits. All of these are going to be coming from aftermarket routes, whether it be Etsy, which is where I found the best ones, or eBay, or any of those routes like that. So we made sure to add those in there to really get a good feel and give you guys the good Tallarn Desert Raiders heads and accessories. So now that you guys know what this army is going to look like, let's talk about how much this is going to cost to field and what types of things you're going to run into on the tabletop. Okay, so this one is actually kind of surprising when it comes to cost. I didn't expect it to be in the price range it's at because of how many tanks and things like that we have. As you guys are well aware, we're going to talk about 3 different types of cost. First being the retail price. This is based off of Warhammer.com at full retail value. Next, we're going to be talking about the value total. This is going to be based off of Wargames Portal and Amazon. For this, I did have to actually use both to find everything. It was not easy. And finally, the fluffy total. The fluffy total is going to be you want to have fun with it, so you're getting 3D printed and resin units. And it won't be tournament legal, but it's going to look the best. The retail cost is actually surprisingly low for what we have here as a unit itself. I think because we're dealing with more tanks than we are Horde, it's actually going to be a little bit less expensive than most Imperial Guard units. And that really surprised me. So at retail price, it's going to run $1,248.35. Now, keep in mind, we went unit by unit to find everything. We did not actually go and buy combo boxes or anything like that to get the units we wanted. That will drastically decrease this price. The Sentinels, the Cadian Shock Troopers, Castellans, a lot of these come in combo boxes that you can get all together and pay $150 for all of them instead of paying between $40 to $100 individually. So I definitely recommend going that route. It will save you money, but even at retail value, this is actually pretty cheap for an Imperial Guard army. Next, we have the value total. This is what I was able to find going unit by unit on Amazon and Wargame Portal. And because some of these units are a little bit more specialized, they were a little bit harder to find. But I was able to find everything I needed on those two websites. And that brings it down to $1,140.64. So it is a pretty good improvement as well. But I'd still look at combo boxes, see where you can save your money, and do what you can, because Imperial Guard gets very expensive very fast. So if you wanted to flesh this unit out to have more options, it will get pretty expensive pretty quickly. Now, the fluffy total does require 4 major changes to the units, getting aftermarket value to help really bring this flair to life. And that total is going to be $1,077.91. The big thing to keep in mind is that these require proxies, so this will not be tournament legal, but it's going to look a lot better on your tabletop. So to do that, you will be proxying the Cadian Shock Troopers with third-party stuff that is designed to look like the Tallarn Desert Raiders. There's a lot of really good options. I found probably 5 or 6 and just went with the medium price range on this. But just looking at Etsy for 5 minutes, found multiple. This is honestly one of the most common, now that Krieg actually has their own line, to find in the aftermarket stuff. Next, you're going to want to do the Island Rough Riders. They had a really cool proxy on bike as well. They did have a horse option on top of that, but just to go with the mechanical feel of the Tallarn Desert Raiders, I used the bike option, which was slightly more expensive. That being said, the horse option looks really good too. It wouldn't be a bad choice. Next, we did proxy the Sentinels. The Sentinels had some pretty cool proxies online that made them look a little bit nicer. In this case, I actually went with the Horus Heresy Sentinels. They give a little bit more variety and make the Scout Sentinels a little bit lighter, while the heavy armored Sentinels have more guns and look more tankish. So it felt more like what I was looking for with the Tallarn Desert Raiders. So a couple easy proxies to really get this working properly and looking clean. But you can do this with paint and a few tricks as well. So let's talk about that next. How are we going to paint these units to get them to look like the Tallarn Desert Raiders? Okay, now that we've got the army figured out, the list built, and how much it's going to cost to make, let's talk about painting them and getting them ready for the battlefield. The nice part with the Tallarn Desert Raiders is they're going to have a really simple paint scheme. It's going to be versions of browns, tans, and grays. There's not going to be a lot of variance and brightness in their colors. They are very, very keen on not being easily noticed in the desert. So typically it's a white or very light tan headscarf or turban or whatever you're wanting to put on them. Typically it's more of a Bedouin head covering than a turban. Their uniforms tend to be some version of desert tan with the occasional sprig of a desert khaki. Luckily, Tallarn Desert Sand is a color in the Citadel paint line, so that's going to be your baseline for a lot of their actual uniforms. It's pretty easy to paint, but the big thing you're going to see is a lot of the cloaks and head coverings aren't going to be as easy to make. Peachy Tips actually has a video on using masking tape to do this. I'll flag it up here. But it's going to be an experience and going to require some practice. So make sure you maybe watch that video, get some ideas on how you're going to want to do this, or maybe look at 3D printing proxies to fill out this unit and make it look as natural as possible. I do think it's going to be a pretty clean looking army. You're going to have a lot of black insignias on tan, on the tanks and things like that. So it's not going to be hard to do, I don't think. I think the biggest thing you're going to want to make sure you do is enough weathering to make it look like they've been in the desert, especially on the vehicles. But it's going to be a really easy one to paint, I think. It's not a lot of accessories. You're going to be relying probably a lot on washes and shading to fill out the gaps and make it look right. But that being said, if it's done well, I have a feeling that that look is going to be very, very good looking on the tabletop. And if any of you guys do have a Tallarn Desert Raiders army, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see any pictures you have posted and see what it looks like, because I think these guys are really fascinating, and I would love to see them on the tabletop. I don't get to see them as much. Most of the time when I see Imperial Guard, I'm either seeing Cadians, Krieg, or some type of Scions, but it's good to know about all these different units. There's a lot of really, really cool Imperial Guard units that would be fun to see on the tabletop more often. Now, with all that said, let's dive into the simple answer of how we're going to play these on the tabletop and wrap this up. Okay, now that we have the army list made, painted, and purchased, let's talk about how we're going to play them on the tabletop. And it's a pretty simple answer. The easiest detachment is the Mechanized Assault detachment from the newest codex. I have a feeling that's going to play really well with the units we have on the tabletop. And it's going to be a pretty straightforward play style as well. We're going to leave one of the Cadian shock troops back to screen our backline and use our mechanized forces to maneuver as quickly as we can to put shots on the enemy as quickly as we can with as much power as we can. Because it's going to be a lot of heavy shooting and heavy driving to make this army really work. And there's going to be certain units that just are going to cause us problems. But that's life of the Imperial Guard player. Sometimes you go up against a foe that is just going to be a problem for you no matter how you play it. I do think that based on this list, you're going to have enough power to deal with most things, but you're going to want to play this as fast as you can to score as many points as you can so that you can pull off the win. There will be problem children. I can totally see Angron causing massive problems with these units because all he has to do is take out the main blade and a couple of other tanks, and all of a sudden you're on your back foot, and we don't want that at all. But I do really like this list. I think it has a lot of potential. So I would love to see somebody build it and use it in a game and tell me how it works. But now that we've discussed all of the tactics and everything, let's wrap this up. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We have a lot of really cool videos coming, and I'm really excited about them. And don't forget to follow up on our sponsor, me. I do have a lot of really cool book stuff going on right now on top of all of this. And if you guys are wanting to see any Readers of the War Game merch or anything like that, let me know in the comments below. I do have a merch system in place now, and I've been thinking about doing Readers of the War Game stuff as well. But there's a lot of work that we'll have to go into that to make it work properly. And finally, if you enjoyed this video and you have either another Imperial Guard unit or a different faction that you want to see in the lore accurate army list, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try and get to it as quickly as I can. This one took a little bit longer than expected, but it was a lot of fun. And if there's any other Warhammer topics you want me to cover as well, let me know. I love to hear those and love any good video idea that we can get. And I will see you guys next time.